Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun with Benzion. Today's daf is Yevamos Kufches 108. We mentioned yesterday that the concept we're talking about Nisui Ktana, a girl who gets married below Bat Mitzvah. She's not Bat Mitzvah yet. And she gets married she's orphaned, her father's not around anymore, so her brother or her mother, or both of them together, marry her off. So the Mishnah clearly says on Kov Zayin Amud Beis, it has to be midaita. She has to get married lidaita. It says hisiwa shalol lidaita and esricha lamay. Like you know by Rivka, I love and asked Rivka, you want to get married to Yitzchak? She was 3 years old, so she consented. If you have her consent, then it works. If not, it doesn't get off the ground. But even if it gets off the ground, so we mentioned there's two parts to it. She can get not only mikudeshes to him, which is their abundant, obviously according to everybody. Also, there's an isuin, and I want to suggest yesterday that an isuin is on a level d'oraisa, because Nisuin, it only says Isha, and Isha by Kiddushin. When it comes to Nisuin, it's possible to have a Nisuin midoraisa. When they're together, when do Be'ilah, so then they're married, they're fully married. Obviously, Miyun, when you do Miyun, it uproots it. But here we're introduced to a new one. Kuf Ches, we're introduced to a new idea. That could be Gerishin also. He can be Megarisher. Obviously, there's Kiddushin, right? Even though it's only their Rabbanan, there's a kind of the Gerishin. So the Gemara draws a distinction on Kov Chedam of Beis, La Halacha, comes out the way they asked Rabbi Akiva and they asked Yehuda and Seira, and they said that it's clear from that they said if she's married to a guy, she's married as a Ketana to a guy, and then the marriage ends in Gerushin. He divorces her, and I was 7 years old. At 8 years old, she goes and marries somebody else, and he's mamayin her, right? He does miyun, right? She does miyun. He doesn't do it. She uproots the marriage. Could she go back to her first husband? Her first husband was Megarish, or she married somebody else. So the Israel in the Torah Machzor Grusha. So if you divorce a lady and she marries somebody else, you can't remarry that lady once you married somebody else. So the Gemara basically says at the end that Maskan of the Gemara is she can't go back because the miyun to the second guy does not uproot the gerushin of the first guy. But it's clear from the Mishnah that if it's the same man, right, she's married to one man, and they do gerushin, and then she remarries the guy, and it ends in miyun, and she decides to end it this time. She wants to get revenge, and then she marries another guy, and then that guy either dies or they get divorced. She can go back to the first husband because the last relationship they had ended in miyun. So that miyun was mavatal, the original get, even though she was a grusha, but the miyun uproot, because miyun is better than a get. Miyun retroactively uproots the marriage mikara, right? It retroactively uproots the marriage mikara. She was never married to the guy, so it's not like she went and married a different guy. You can't call achrei sharhutama because it uprooted the original marriage. So this is where it gets very interesting over here. What's the distinction over here? I like to suggest that just like we say there's disun by ektana, there's also a concept of, even though a woman can't be mikudeshes to two men, which it says very clearly in the beginning of Mesachas Kedushin and Dav Zayin, there is a concept she could be nesua to two men. She is, and that's part of the Isra Machzor Grushato, right? Acharei Sharhutama, because she's married to you, right? So you gave her a get. Now, when you give a woman a get is directly corresponding to Kedushin. It annuls the Kedushin, if there was a Kedushin. But a get does not end in Nisuin, because the Nisuin still goes on. The marriage, when you're married to someone, you're always married. Like the Gemara says, you always remember the guy, Ramizosav, Kisosav. When she marries a second person, so it's like she's married to two men. So for that first husband, she becomes Tameh, right? She's married to a man, and technically she's allowed to get married to the second man. It's not called Eishes Ish, because Eishes Ish is dependent on the Kedushin and the Gerushin. Eishes Ish is only a din in Kiddushin and Gerushin. It's important to remember. Not in Nisuin. Nisuin, she's technically married to the second guy. It says a lav in the Torah, Acharei Shahutama, it takes effect. She is married to a second guy. Being married to a second guy makes you tummy to the first guy, right? Because the first husband doesn't want to have a woman who's married to another man. So that's part of the Torah. The Torah says you can't be machzir grushasa. You can't be machzir grushasa acharei shahutama. Now she can go marry a third man, because the third man, he's getting a new wife. So he's getting a new wife. It's not going down. It's malim kedusha lo moridin. If you were married to a woman, then she marries another man. So she klapa you, That's Morid and Bikdusha, right? She was only your wife. Now she's married to you and to somebody else. She went down a level, so that's not Mal, that's Morid and Bikdusha. But if she was to marry a third man, right? He was already married to her. He's getting something. So who cares if he was married to one guy or two guys before? He's getting something positive. So that's the idea over here, that when it comes to one man, right, and if the first Nisui Ktana ends in Gerushin, which is Mavata the Kedushin Darabana, and it allows her to remarry, and then the second marriage ends in Miyun. So the concept of Miyun is that Miyun is so powerful that Nisui Ktana, even though she technically could have an Isuin, but her Miyun is stronger than a get. A Miyun, this is a big Chiddush. A Miyun is stronger than a get in that a get just works Mikano La'aba. Everyone knows a get works Mikano La'aba. It doesn't say that the Kedushin was retroactively ineffective. You were married, now you're divorced. Miyun retroactively uproots the original Nisuin. Therefore, she was never married to the guy, and therefore, when she goes to marry somebody else, a second man, there's no Tuma because she's never married to the first guy, so it's not Tuma. And then, when that marriage ends, she can marry the first guy because she was never married to him. That's the koach of Miyun over here, and that's born out from the Mishnah, and that's why the difference, right? When she's married to two different men, she ends one with a get and the second guy with a Miyun. So the Miyun of the friend is not Mavatal, the get of the second guy, because you can only be Maya, you can't be Maya. She's married to one guy, now she's married to a second guy. She's doing Miyun to the second guy. She's not doing Miyun to the first guy, so she only uprooted the half of the Nisuin into the second guy, but she never uprooted the half of the first guy, because that's the guy she's with now, right? If she's with the same guy both times, so she can uproot it. That marriage just continues from phase 1 to phase 2. She could still uproot it, but if she is with one guy and a second guy, she does Miyun to the second guy, so that doesn't uproot the marriage of the first guy. She's still married to the first guy, and therefore she can't go back. She was with the second guy, she can't go back to the first guy. That explains also why the Mishnah says that you need her ledaita, you need her consent of Aktana for her marriage, right? The Gemara says in Kedushin that Kedushin doesn't work Baal Karka. It has to have the consent of the woman. Of course, she's a Gedola by Kedushin. For Nisuin, though, the Gemara at the beginning of Ksuvos, I believe Tosfos points out that you can have Nisuin Baal Karka. So why over here is Nisuin is Midaita? So when it comes to Aktana, she's getting married. She's not of age to really make a complete decision. Her decision is not a complete decision, so therefore you have to have her consent. It can't be Baal Karka. And since it's dependent on her consent, so therefore when she does Miyun, because Katana can't really make proper decisions, so she gives her consent, but it's not a full consent. It's sort of like her consent is, reinvigorating itself every second. It just keeps on, mitla tali v'kai is the way it keeps on, it keeps on, it's not like it took effect and that's it. No, it keeps on regenerating every second. She has to totally be in consent. And when she ends that consent, it has to be daita, she uprooted the consent originally because Aktana can't really make perfect decisions. So she's sort of like going on a whim over here. So until she wants it, it's a marriage. And when she doesn't want it, she revealed to us she never wanted the marriage in the first place. That's why you're able to uproot the Nisuin by me, and that's the big chiddush over here. That's why you need Nisui Ktana, you need her Ladaita, because the whole marriage is predicated on a decision that's not a professional decision. It's not the decision of an adult, and therefore it's mital tali v'kai. It's constantly regenerating itself. It's constantly needed to be reinforced. Once it lacks that reinforcement, so I don't want it anymore, it uproots it retroactively, and that's the whole idea of Miyun, that it works to retroactively uproot the whole marriage. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you tomorrow.